briefly give you the background of the CIC project and the purpose of hosting the webinar series. Okay. Yeah, okay. So Climate Innovation Challenge is a part of a 5-year project called Climate Adaptation and Resilience for South Asia, a partnership between ADPC, Regional Integrated Multi-Hazard Early Warning System, and the World Bank. CIC is financed by the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office of the Government of UK through the World Bank's PARCC Trust Fund. The aim of CIC project is to crowdsource innovative and disruptive technology solutions for resilience through grant awards, matchmaking, and pilot testing, and facilitate scaling up of these solutions for greater impact. Now, 16 of such technologies in 7 different thematic areas from all around the world have already been identified and under implementation in 6 countries in South Asia. Now, a little bit on the webinar series. ADPC is in the process of hosting webinar series, and the aim of the webinar series is to bring together global experts and practitioners on climate adaptation and resilience and share their practical field experience from different regions. We are hoping that this will help all the stakeholders with learning lessons, share knowledge, and apply them in the scaling of the pilot innovations. Now, moving forward, I would like to take the opportunity here to introduce our guest speaker and the panelists for today's session. I may start with our speaker, Mr. UnniKrishnan Nair. Mr. Nair is the head of climate change at the Commonwealth Secretariat in UK. Before joining the Commonwealth, he led the Global Green Growth Institute India and has also served the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Secretariat in Bonn. He is a development professional with an educational background in agriculture and climate science, with over 20 years of experience in the areas of climate change adaptation and mitigation, project development and implementation, and policies on climate finance. It's an honor to have you with us today, Mr. Nair. Now, moving on to our panelists. We have Mr. Nuwan Kumarasinghe. He's from Alliance for Appropriate Technology Exchange, Sri Lanka. Mr. Nuwan is a project manager and coordinator with AfATE. He is a former chief electrical engineer from Department of Meteorology. He has served for more than 27 years in the government sector and private sector in Sri Lanka. He has designed more than 100 lightning protection systems and conducted more than 100 workshops and seminars in Sri Lanka and Thailand. He also holds a postgraduate diploma in satellite communication from Space Application Center, Ahmedabad, India. Welcome, Mr. Nuwan. Now moving on to our third panelist. Our third panelist is Dr. Habib Rahman from Curtin University, Australia. Dr. Rahman is the director of Center for Research in Applied Economics and is a senior lecturer in economics at Curtin University, Australia. He is an internationally recognized economist conducting research on a crossroad of environment, climate change, natural disaster, and sustainable social policies. He has over 15 years of experience providing technical assistance to the governments, international development partners, and the non-government organizations. His research has informed public policies to the government of Australia, Bangladesh, Cambodia, Nepal, Thailand, and Sri Lanka. Welcome, Dr. Habib. We are honored to have them all here with us today and very much looking forward to hear them. With that, now I kindly invite our key speaker, Mr. Nair, to speak and share his views on today's topic. Over to you, Mr. Nair.
Yeah, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you very much for the organizers in giving this opportunity to talk about this very important and very relevant topic, which is scaling up of innovations in climate smart agriculture. So, we after COP26, we are at a very critical phase of implementing actions to make impact in the ground. I think the international community as well as the national communities have more or less now realized that that we did talk a lot about climate action. We did talk a lot about the requirement of the government commitments for action, but now it's a time for basically going forward and implementing actions in the ground and to make transformational impact for the people who are impacted. So with this a kind of a context, we would like I would like to see the kind of scaling up of adaptation actions, especially in climate smart agriculture. So what does scaling up means? It's nothing else but maximizing the impact of agriculture interventions. It's basically we generally follow both a horizontal as well as a vertical strategy for enhancing that kind of action and also to maximizing the impact. When I say horizontal action, it's more to support the beneficiaries and also to increase the impact at the farmers level, so that it's the technology innovation serves the farmer to better their agriculture practice. And at the same time, we also need to have more of vertical approaches that are focused on national policies and also funding mechanisms, collaborations, and partnerships. I think a kind of a balance between the horizontal and vertical approaches is going to be supremely important at national and subnational as well as international level to make sure that this scaling up and the maximizing impact happens sustainably. In order to meet the SDG goals as well as to meet the NDC targets till in the run up to 2030, this basically for agriculture sector, which is contributing to larger scales of greenhouse gas emissions and also contributing to the livelihood security of millions of people. I think this is an important area and this needs more focused attention. So I see like climate smart agriculture, climate smart food system, climate smart landscapes. These are getting a lot of traction these days. Even in the Commonwealth, which is a 54-member nation organization, we are launching what we call the Commonwealth Living Lands Charter in the Commonwealth Heads of the Government meeting in 2022 in summer, where we will be launching the charter, which is basically to deal with climate smart landscapes and of course climate smart food systems and climate smart agriculture practices. But having said that, what are the kind of various components that we should look into when we do the scaling up process, or what are the kind of scaling up needs actually? So I'll say 5 important parameters that will decide efficiency and effectiveness of a scaling up process for climate smart agriculture. So the first is a commercial business case integrating the various value chains. So what we see right now is that like the business cases that are being developed are either very much customer centric or either very much producer centric. So we need to have a kind of a value chain based approach when we make a commercial business case for climate smart agriculture, because there are these value chains contribute to climate change, and also climate change is being impacted by these value chains. So unless we take the value chain in its entirety and plan the business case, it is not going to work. So that's the first most important aspect around scaling up. The second is to secure more public investment for demand-driven innovation, and definitely private sector collaboration is an important aspect there to enhance the public investments and the delivery of the public investment. So but right now what we see is basically the public investment around agriculture is what is happening when it comes to climate smart investments, but the private investment basically is not fully oriented. It's basically because of the awareness and the level of integration of the adaptation and mitigation strategies. We see a lot of investment, especially in India, coming from the and countries in the Southeast Asia, coming from the private sector, from the corporate social responsibility and social investments. But do they really make the change at scale is still something which we need to reevaluate. The third important aspect around scaling up is the technologies and the techniques, especially around climate resilient and low carbon development. So, we do know that there are a lot of technologies and techniques available that could reduce emissions and also that could enhance adaptation. But there's generally a saying that whatever is green and green is costly, and whatever greener a technology is, it's financially not viable. So I think that's an important aspect that we need to consider when we look at subsistence farming to large scale farming. So there are efforts in terms of building up the institutional architecture to integrate these kind of technologies into at scale, but still with a big majority of farmers being subsistence farmers, we need to have a relook at these technologies and techniques and see how efficient and effective they are. And the fourth area is financing. And so definitely innovative financing mechanisms and financial instruments are required for scaling up needs. Definitely when countries are now working on ESG strategies and green banking norms, definitely those are thoughts in the right direction, but still the prudential norms go against funding innovators, and the prudential go against funding people who are less creditworthy and who are the big majority when it comes to vulnerable categories. So that's also an important aspect that we need to take care of when we plan the scaling up needs and the scaling up aspects. And the financial instruments, definitely there are a lot of financial instruments right now available that looks at enhancing investments, but do they really support the last mile beneficiaries? Do they really support the farming communities in adopting these practices? Unless and until they adopt the practices, this will all remain as islands of success. And the last and the fifth point that I would like to say is capacity building. This is at the level of both human and institutional capacity building. So human capacities definitely needs enhancement when it comes to adoption of technologies, when it comes to adoption of new financial instruments. At the same time, are there proper institutional mechanisms available? So now we have seen a great momentum towards federating farmers to more farmer producers, organizations, and also more of federated, structured farmers groups in many countries, and then linking them up to financial institutions having more credit worthiness, etc. So this is going to be an important and a major challenge in the scaling up process. Thus I would like to say that an integration of these 5 areas, which I would like to repeat, a commercial a business case, integrating the value chain, secure public-private partnership, and enhance public and private investments in this space, climate resilient, low carbon technologies and techniques, innovative financing mechanisms and financial instruments, and capacity building. So this, I'll say, are the kind of 5 major things that one should look into before we jump into the scaling up process in countries. So there exist a lot of gaps, and this is a space where organizations and partnerships could come in. And as Commonwealth, we are committed to supporting member countries in sustainable and climate smart agriculture. So Commonwealth, heads of the government has given the Secretariat of the Commonwealth Secretariat the mandate to support member countries in access to finance by its flagship initiative, the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub. So we have right now around 12 countries where our advisors are embedded, who are supporting the member country government in access to finance in terms of developing innovative financial instruments to absorb technologies and adapt technologies for the country needs. Similarly, as I was just mentioning in the beginning, the Commonwealth is launching the Commonwealth Living Lands Charter. So this is a charter where we will be working closely with the 3 Rio Conventions, the UNFCCC, the UNCCD, and the UNCBD, in terms of integrating coordinated action, basically for enhanced nature-based solutions. And sustainable agriculture and climate smart food systems, and of course, climate smart landscapes are a major component of this particular effort of the Secretariat. And I extend full support of the Commonwealth Secretariat in the initiatives supported by the UK government and the other partners here. And definitely we look forward to further and future engagement in this very important area, and see to it that there is transformational action happening in the ground level, and we have more of sustained solutions going into the member countries, not only as policies but also as actions in the ground. So I'll stop here, and would wish this particular webinar all success, and we'll look forward to an enriching discussion with the rest of the panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nair. It was very absorbing and comprehensive. And thanks to shed light on some of the very important aspects, perspective on scaling of innovations and overcoming constraints. It was quite thought-provoking. Mr. Nair, we would request you to address a couple of our key questions, some of which it's already been covered in what you just said, but if you would like to add something else to that. My first question to you is, what do you think are the most critical challenges faced by the agriculture sector due to the climate change? And what role do you think the policymakers can play to make the farmers more resilient to these climate change?
Yeah. Well, it's a very important question. It's a question that the policymakers have been like trying to address. So I think the most important challenge and the most pressing challenge in agriculture sector is the kind of correlation between climate change impacting the crop production pattern, and of course leading to more of anthropogenic emissions. Like, for example, when we have continuous drought and reduced water demand, our dependence on energy intensive agriculture and input intensive agriculture increases, leading to a situation where we will have to depend more on energy sources and also more on chemical fertilizers to have the sustained production. So the policy, the classical case is the integrated pest management, the organic agriculture, etc., which we have seen not successfully taken off because there is no coherent policies or policies at scale that enables the farmers to adopt it uniformly. Because if one patch of farmer adopt organic or integrated farming and the other patch goes on the non or the chemical intensive farming, there is no point in doing that, because the cross pest movements enhances. So that's going to be one of the major practical difficulty that countries will or the countries will face. And of course we need to have coherent policies. It's not easy to do because agriculture is pretty much linked to populist measures in government. So we need to have a very closer look at country specific situation and then plan the policies accordingly. So yeah, so that according to me is the major challenge.
Thank you. My next question is, when we talk about climate smart innovation, it's not just about the technology itself, it's also about the approach, which is very local and country specific. What are your views on how to identify and address the gaps between the climate innovation knowledge and the technology and use them for successful scaling of the pilot?
Yeah. No, I think any innovation or any technology to be popular, to be made popular among the farmers, I think the best possible way is demonstration. So obviously we need to have, because that's again an age-old practice when we go for demonstration farmers or maybe the lead farmers to demonstrate. But for large-scale adoption and for large-scale replication of such practices, it's supremely important to have a financing model around that. Like, for example, we have seen the big issue of stubble burning in many of the countries, including India, where still, and we have big, large-scale public institutions who can procure that, but the financing mechanisms around the approach is not completely viable to do that. Similarly, if you have innovative adaptation technologies which are not cost-effective, the extent of adoption will be very limited. So again, we need to have blended financing instruments, having both grants and loans to enable farmers, or maybe innovative financial instruments instruments that will support farmers to adopt these kind of technologies and then still survive with a positive margin. I think that's the end, because end of the day, everyone wants to make profit and farmers want to survive a good life. So we should not discount that. Actually, when we make policies, we also need to look at the financial viability of that.
Thank you, sir. My last question is, how would the Commonwealth Secretariat be effective in promoting such initiatives in Asia?
Sure. So the Commonwealth Secretariat, as I just explained before, is in this particular front of sustainable agriculture is launching the Commonwealth Living Lands Charters. So this is going to be a 54-member nation joint initiative where we will be supporting member countries in coordinated action, especially between the 3 Rio Conventions, and to work on the key performance areas of the 3 Rio Conventions. And the Secretariat's advantage here is that we do have certain established platforms and processes like the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub, as I explained, and also we do have 80 plus accredited entities or accredited organizations with the Commonwealth who could support in the processes. So we are already in partnership with the International Solar Alliance, for example, and I have a regional advisor currently sitting in the International Solar Alliance in New Delhi, supporting the renewable integration process across the Asia Pacific region. So that's kind of one example that I would like to give.
Okay, good afternoon from Colombo and from here, everybody, and thank you very much for giving us the opportunity. So I'm representing Alliance for Appropriate Technology Exchange, Guarantee Limited, Kandy, Sri Lanka. So our project team is achieving food and nutritional security of urban and semi-urban communities in Sri Lanka, and the change in variable climate through smart vertical farming module. So before I come to the exact our project details, so let me a little bit explain. So as you know that Sri Lanka is an island in the tropics, and we have 2 seasonal monsoonal seasons and 2 intermonsoonal seasons, and we also have 2 agricultural seasons, Yala and Maha. So Yala season falls in the first intermonsoon season, and the southwest monsoon in May to September, whereas the Maha season falls in second intermonsoon season, October, November, and the northeast monsoon, December to February. And so what are the present challenges and in this field? So agriculture sector of the country is already under pressure in Sri Lanka. So due to escalating effect of climate change and increasing demand for food due to growing population, available space is very limited in especially in urban areas in Sri Lanka, and also in some extent semi-urban areas in Sri Lanka as well. Present government policy, the organic agriculture will have an extra pressure on the productivity on both land and water at the expense of national food and nutritional security. So however, this scenario has to be met with due commitment from the farmers, the agriculture officers, the policymakers, and lawmakers if we are committed to meet the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So in our project, the area we have selected 2 provinces in Sri Lanka. So you can see in the northern province, we have selected 3 semi-urban areas, whereas in western province, we have selected 4 urban areas and 3 semi-urban areas in Sri Lanka. So the climate change actually, how it affects actually for the farming community, especially for the rainfall farming system due to extreme weather conditions, both droughts and heavy rainfalls event. So here you can see in 2 districts we have selected, and the northern province we have selected Jaffna district, and in the western province we have selected Colombo district in the northern province, and so both provinces you can see a different 4 seasons, how the rainfall, the contribution of the rainfall in these 4 seasons. Now, if you take the Colombo in the western province, In the first inter-monsoon period, so the 15% of the total contribution is in for this first inter-monsoon period, whereas the southwest monsoon is only 44%. And in Jaffna, in the first inter-monsoon, only 6%, whereas in the southwest monsoon, we can see 15%. And after analyzing all these, the previous data, so we can observe the trend, and hot days in both districts, Colombo and Jaffna, there's an increasing trend, whereas in cold night and cold days in the Colombo and Jaffna district, both are in the decreasing trend. So what is actually the climate smart agriculture? So it's based on the three pillars: the adaptation, increased productivity, or the food security, and the mitigation. So to achieve all this, the climate smart agriculture advocates for the use of farmers' local knowledge to ensure easy adoption. So the project, we have designed the smart vertical farming modules with other two supporting modules, which addresses the three pillars of the climate smart agriculture at different degrees and scales. So what are the expected benefits out of this? So the production of vegetables and green leaf vegetables in the home garden with organic approach where the carbon footprint is minimum. The organic approach will ensure the food safety where hazardous agrochemicals will be hardly used. The availability of vegetables and leaf vegetables year-round, even during extreme weather situations, their availability and access to food become an issue. And also, I did not mention here, even during the pandemic situations, we have experienced in the last 2 years in Sri Lanka and like other part of the world. So production process of the smart vertical farming module fully depends on the green approaches such as solar power and rainwater harvesting. So actually, how do we integrate, how do we approach in the integrated approach we are using to state-of-the-art technology in the ICT field? As you know that here I have mentioned some of the areas: smart sensors and smart mapping, smart equipment monitoring, smart crop monitoring, like that. So all these techniques, at least nowadays, many parts of the world, they are using for agriculture purposes, especially for the data collection, the diagnostic part, and also decision makers finally to take action. In our case, we did not use all of this technology due to our time limitations of this project. So we have used some of the sensors for soil measurement, light intensity, the pH and temperature, and relative humidity, especially for the soil moisture to control the irrigation and drip irrigation part through soil moisture sensor, which control the watering part of the project or the unit, sorry. And as actuators, we are using solenoid valves to control this the watering and the fertilizer or the fertigation. And the communication, we are using the GPRS. And right now we are developing the web application in order to user to get the information, and also the others who want to get some information and these modules. So here you can see the smart vertical farming module, and on the left side and the right side, this is the first module we have developed and already installed in the one urban area in Colombo district in the Western Province. Here you can see 6 gutters made with zinc aluminum, where the solid medium is used for these gutters as a plant medium, for the plant medium. And these 2 pipes we are using for hydroponics purposes. Now here you can see other supporting modules and parts of it. Now here the 500-liter water tank for the rainwater harvesting, and also solar panel we are using as the main power source. And drip irrigation will automatically switch on when the soil moisture level decreases. So here you can see at the right-hand side. And hence there will be no wastage of collected rainwater for irrigation of the system. And an unproductive home garden will become a source of producing safe household vegetables and leaf vegetables requirement. The expenditure on purchasing household requirement of FSA food commodities will be minimum. And if the production of the system exceeds household consumption, excess production could be marketed to guarantee to generate extra household income. So here you can see the vegetable and leafy vegetable varieties: green chili, bell pepper, tomato, radish, capsicum, beetroot, carrot, cabbage, and as leaf vegetable, spinach and lettuce we are using in the hydroponics medium, and other kangkung, the corticola, the mukurana we are using in the solid medium. The selection is done according to the household's preference as per their food habits. So this concept has already been an employee in the mainstream of agriculture in Sri Lanka, and hence the smart vertical farming will naturally accept by the urban and semi-urban communities, the both provinces where the project is being implemented. Now, depending on the success rate or whatever, so at the end of the, July, before ending our project, we are planning to have organized 2 workshops. The first one is aiming for stakeholders and the private sector and NGO members to promote the rest of the, the provinces in Sri Lanka and even further in South Asian region as well. So the commercialization in real estate and hotel industry, we are also thinking on that, and also including architectural designs, especially in high-rise buildings. So here you can see how the community, the participation here, and the busy urban and semi-urban community will naturally opt to execute the output of the project due to automatic features of the SVFM and able to grow different crops varieties in limited space. And here in the photos, you can see the first installation in one of the urban areas in Western Province, where even the whole family members, they are participating in the planting process. And in 20 days ago, we have started our first unit installation, and after that, and as for yesterday, and it is how it looks like in the plant growth process. And we are also, you can see the mock-up of our web page or the web application at the right side. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Nuwan. That was very descriptive and informational. It was constructive how you have integrated rainwater harvesting and solar power in your pilot to reduce the water consumption and lower the emission of greenhouse gases. So now moving on to our next presentation, I would request Dr. Habib Rahman to kindly take over and share his presentation. Over to you, Dr. Habib.
Today's webinar is on the scaling of the climate smart agriculture, and we'll try to reflect through our lenses on the project that we have already built on. And the title of our project is the Innovating Non-Monetary Interventions for Climate Smart Agriculture, an Adapt Model for Technology Diffusion. So this is the outcome of a consortium, both nationally and internationally. So Curtin University Australia is the consortium lead, and in our consortium we are lucky to have some international experts from Deccan University and University Technology Malaysia. We also have the local survey partners, and they are University of Dhaka, Bangladesh Agricultural University, and University of Rajshahi in Bangladesh. We are also working very closely with the line ministries in Bangladesh. We have the local coordinator from the Bangladesh Institute of International and Strategic Studies. So this project is mainly built on the idea of the nudge theory. So what is nudge theory? First, I'll try to highlight about the basics of nudge theory, and that would be helpful for our audience to really follow on what we'd be doing in this initiative. So the proponent of the notch theory is Dr. Richard H. Taylor, and for his contribution to this notch theory, he has been awarded with the 2017 Nobel Prize in his contribution to the notch theory. So what is notch? It is basically a slight push to guide the human behavior to a certain direction. So meaning that we, the human, we need some kind of maybe motivations or incentives to really do something bigger. But of most often, we really need a little bit of push to do the big thing. So that is, in fact, what nudge theory does. So just to give you some kind of like anecdotal evidence, for example, the left-hand side picture, so the flat said that we have to push the door, but we really put the handle. But when we put the handle, then people, our brain is really wired in such a way that we will try to pull the door, not to push it, even if it is written like we have to push it. So I think so that was the architecture failure. So if we really want people to push a door, we should not give the handle. So this is in fact like one strategy of how we could really incentivize people to really get some specific direction from the human behavior. So this is a very textbook type example of the implementation of notch theory. So in 1997, in the Amsterdam's like Schiphol airport, there was a problem with the like cleaning the like urinal bowl, because passengers they are tired after their very long journey, and then they try to just spill around the urinal bowl. So and then due to that sort of things, the airport administration team, they had to really have the hefty cleaning cost for that one. So then they really hired like one economist, like in fact Richard Taylor, and then he said that why don't we really put a very small fly, because people's brain really works to really aim towards the fly, and then that way there are some kind of directions, and that really, I mean, reduce the spill around 80%. Okay, so this is how we could really guide our behavior, and then we could really do a little bit, but the outcome would be quite substantial. There is another notch example here. For example, this is the road of Bangladesh, and then in the curve, most of the times the bus drivers, they don't really reduce their speed, and that was in fact the sole contributor of the accidents. But then if we really try to execute the notch theory, what we could really do, we could really try to create some kind of illusion, and then we'll really make some kind of gap little from A to B, so that the driver, they would say that, oh, maybe it is maybe the road is about to end, so I have to break it. So that way we could really guide the driver's behavior. So this is in we all would really like the vaccination case here. So we all feel like maybe money is the main motivator, but it's not true always. For example, like the vaccine deniers, the way they really think like, yeah, the government, most of the countries, they really give the vaccination for free, meaning that this is not a good thing. That's why government is giving it free. So I think that's why like money, giving that sort of subsidy towards the like those vaccine deniers, it could the effect could be really opposite. So what we really should do, we really, instead of going for the monetary based incentive, we should really try to engineer the human behavior through the nudging intervention. So can we really do something in terms of the climate smart agriculture sector here? Yeah, I think there are so many technologies that are really starting popping up like after 2000s, and here are some kind of examples. So we'll really try to think about this solar irrigation here, because technology is not the problem, because inventions are there, but the problem is with the adoption. And also, like Mr. Nair also said, that I think if we could really adopt the technology, in other words, if we really scale the technology, then we could really maximize the benefit of what we have already invented. So this project would really try to understand the minds of the farmers of why do they really adopt the solar irrigation technology. So we'll try to see whether they really are incentivized due to some kind of advocacy, or maybe some kind of demonstration from their like the peers, or maybe there are some kind of information gap. And finally, we'll try to also see maybe there are some kind of peer pressure that really qualifies farmers to really sign in for this sort of like new technology. So we'll try to really understand these 4 nudging principles: advocacy, demonstration, omitting misinformation, and then the peer pressure. So why this project is innovative, we think because of its scalability. Because nudge is really, in most of the times, we really need to give a little push. So that means it does not really require huge financial resources. So that way, if the government wants to really execute it at the national level, it is very much possible. So what is our method? So we really take Bangladesh as our case study. So in Bangladesh, we have got already more than 2,300 solar systems across 28 districts. And then this is, in fact, 50% is the cost of really adopting this solar irrigation system are being subsidized by the government. But the adoption rate among the farmers is like around 20%. So it's a big puzzle for the government of Bangladesh, why farmers, they are not even willing to really adopt this sort of like a sustainable technology. So to really understand that, we will have like a randomized control trials sort of a survey tool, and then we will be surveying like 56 solar system, and we will really take those 56 solar systems randomly across the districts of Bangladesh. And among that 56 solar system, 1,400 farmers would be the solar irrigation system adopters, and 1,400 would be the non-adopters group. And then we'll try to really compare like why adopters adopt and non-adopters they deny to adopt. So this is, in fact, the strategy. Just let's think about the red dot is the location of the solar irrigation pump, and all those green ones are the locations of those fields where the farmers, they have adopted it, and then the indigo ones, like the deep blue ones, they fail to really adopt that one. And then we will try to really make some kind of comparative analysis. Why is this difference between these 2 groups? So our progress, I think we have already developed the questionnaire tool, and then we have already pre-tested it. And then just quite recently, we have the national engagement workshop where most of like the Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Sustainable and Renewable Energy Development Authority, and finally, Ministry of Power, Energy and Mineral Resources, they just attended our workshop, and they also really shared some of their good practices, and they also guided our team on what could be the challenges in terms of really executing this project. And one good thing about that one, like the secretary of the I think Mr. Mustafa Kamal from the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. So he really requested our team to really try to understand whether it is possible to really come up with some kind of technological breakthrough to really replace diesel by maybe some kind of solar energy to run the power tiller. So I think what we are really trying to do, because Curtin University of Technology, we are really famous for the technology intervention. So now our engineering team is working with the American International University of Bangladesh, their engineering faculty, to really come up with that sort of like a new technology to really convert the power tiller like with a more sustainable energy source. So hopefully we'll try to come up with a prototype one, and if possible, we'll try to also display it maybe hopefully at the end of this project. Okay, so after that one, maybe I'll just give you a very little bit what's going on now. So we have got like 60 enumerators. They are now in the field. They are doing the survey across different districts in Bangladesh. And we are also really doing it on the digital platform. We call it AmWater portal. And that way we'll also know exactly the locations of our enumerators and the farmers. So then after that, we'll match their location with the location of the solar power irrigation pump, and then that way we'll also try to understand their proximity. Then the output, so far we have delivered like 2 reports to the ADPC team. So the first one is about the survey instrument. The second one is about the report on the survey training workshop. The third one is underway. So it's about the report of the national engagement workshop. And that's all what I have got today. So if there is any questions, happy to take. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Habib, for your presentation. It was very absorbing. And this ADOPT model, inspired by the nudge theory, it sounds simple yet very promising and effective concept with the direct involvement of the end users. Now, next question is, does the climate change increase the insect, destroy the plantation problem in Sri Lanka? Do you use pesticides to get rid of them? If so, how do you improve the water quality that polluted with the toxic chemicals from the pesticide? I think this one is for Mr. Nuwan.
Yeah, you already answered in the chat box, but anyway, right, this is actually, if you talk about the plantation, this is a broad thing, but we only concentrate the home, household home gardening. So of course, yeah, the plantation industry, if you take the paddy or the paddy cultivation or the tea cultivation, yes, of course, we use pesticide and other things, agrochemical things. But for our module, we do not use any agrochemicals or the pesticide. That is the one thing. Because household, really, they wish to have always freshy vegetables and greeny vegetables. That's our main idea. We do not use any. Okay, in case we can expect, of course, even with the controlled, semi-controlled environment, we can expect some pests. But in our case, the dialogues with our end users, and we have moved to the Jaffna area and the Northern Peninsula in Sri Lanka, and also the Western Province, they use at the moment some organic practices. So they have some biopesticide. We plan to use, in such cases, the biopesticide. But in our case, as is a very limited area, so we expect very few pests, in fact, things in the future, hopefully. And another question they asked about the water pollution. Of course, there's no proven, laboratory proven or the research, they have proved that is any polluted water in Sri Lanka as far as the research are concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nuwan. Okay, we have another question from Mahjabeen Mahfouz. I think this one is Habib. We have used the nudge theory to improve wash behavior in Bangladeshi schools with positive results. I have a question for the first presenter, that's Mr. Habib. Have you measured the extent and impacts of urban rooftop gardening? I wonder if there is any sustainable impact on carbon emission of rooftop garden, subsequently any negative consequences on the building longevity.
Yeah, thank you, Mahjabeen Mahfouz, for that excellent question. Yes, I think Curtin University, we had a project under the World Bank, I think back in 2017 to 2019, and we did a case study, and we also did measure the impact of the urban rooftop gardening, and the effect is basically quite promising, because this sort of idea been also generated from like the urban island effect. So in the urban island effect, I think it really works in an opposite way, but then the urban rooftop gardening could really reduce the effect of the urban island and then so that way I think nudge theory could also really work, but the problem is the scalability, because if you really try to really convert all those rooftops into like the green gardening, maybe it's a huge asking and a huge undertaking, because in the realm of the social science, it's quite tough to really incentivize people to really act, right? So instead of really doing that one, maybe it's a better way to really get some kind of like a like society level sort of like intervention. Maybe it's not like each and every rooftop, but maybe as a like society, and then can they really contribute to really convert some of those like barren land into some kind of like forests. So that way, I think if we have this sort of commitments, it could also improve the land use planning, and maybe the impact would be quite more. Thank you.
Now we have Barira Fatima from Pakistan Council of Research in Water Resources. You can unmute yourself, Barira.
I have a question from Dr. Habib. Thank you, sir, for your very nice and informative presentation. I just want to know that as you might have experience in Bangladesh as well as we experience in Pakistan, that how this nudge theory work for the bottom-up methods of farmers who are already adapting to climate change somehow. Because I believe with my experience of working with farmers, climate change has reached to the papers and scientific community later than the farmers. How our nudge theory actually account for or consider farmers' efforts of making these change for their welfare, or how it is that a reverse nudge or a nudge for the researchers as well, that to encapsulate how farmers are doing it, and that is the bottom-up approach, which is also a driver of innovation and perhaps the climate innovation as well.
Thank you very much. I think it's a great question again. Yes, I think in fact, definitely, I think there are like in our society, there are some group of individuals, they're always proactive. And we don't really need much in terms of really guiding their behavior. So they are proactive, they really do the right things in most of the occasions. But if you take the percentage of those people, I think they are not the majority by any chance. So since they're not the majority, then they can't really create huge like scalable impact to the society. And most of the times those kind of like adaptation is coming from the, as you said, like the lower strata of the income group in a country. So they also don't have much sort of impact in terms of really like sensitizing the policymakers to really take those kind of policies into action. So I feel like maybe this is really good, but we as a researcher, I think we also have this social responsibility to really take up those things and then really market it. Such that we could really scale it up, because now in most of the things, it's a coordination failure basically, because there are so many good things are happening here and there, even within country or even like you just name it, like across countries. But the problem here is that we failed, I think, very miserably to really scale up those sort of good ideas. So I think that way, if we could really take those kind of like local driven sort of interventions and then take it at the national level, I think so that way I think it would be a really, I mean, good initiative. So we really need some kind of like bridge between like academia, like the research centers, and also like the local leaders or the think tanks, or even like the champions, as you rightly said. So I think that may be the future in terms of really creating the like larger scale impact in this spectrum. Thank you. Hi, Jyoti, we can't hear.
With that, we have come to the end of this webinar. Now, I would request my colleague Sharing to say a few words to conclude the session. Thank you, everyone.
So we have come to the end of today's webinar on scaling innovations in climate smart agriculture. I think we have had quite an interactive and an interesting session. We definitely received over close to 120 attendees actually registered. And we saw that it was a good mix of public, private, academia, international organizations, and nonprofits. Obviously, all of them with a keen interest and stake in innovating for climate resilience and with a focus on climate smart agriculture. That for us is definitely encouraging. If I just say a few, like the key takeaway actually for me from the discussions as well as the presentation today is that given the numerous challenges faced by the communities across from our own experiences as well as the experiences that the grantees have shared with us, is how we can maximize the impact of climate smart agriculture to go to scale through a balance in horizontal as well as vertical scaling. And I think Mr. Nair has already talked about what the horizontal and vertical scaling can be. But we also saw the case for innovative technology in the two presentations on Adopt model by Dr. Rahman in Bangladesh that is being implemented in Bangladesh, and smart vertical farming approach by AfATE that is being implemented in Sri Lanka. So of course, there are other parameters such as value chain integration and public investments to enhance the private sector, financing mechanisms, instruments and capacity building that cuts across all of these sectors. So this was for me the key takeaway. I would like to thank you again for joining us today in for this session, for this webinar. A very special thank you to our guest speaker, and I would like to say 3 panelists, but now the 2 panelists, Dr. Rahman and Nuwan. Thank you so much for your presentation. We hope to see you all again in our next webinar, and it is on climate sustainable economy and the need for information and analytics. That is on the 18th of April. We will confirm with the speakers as well as the panelists, and we will announce that in good time. And have a good day, have a good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today.